Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Travillian Next. It has been quite a while since my last episode. Things are really hot in the job market right now, and summer kicked in. But I'm very, very happy to have with me Kevin Kielbasa, head of business development at Narmi. I've gotten to know Kevin pretty well over the last year. I know Kevin, Travillian, our managing director, David Yankowski. And yeah, it's great to see you at Narmi in the fintech world. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely, Keith. Psyched to be here. Really excited about what you guys are doing in the space. As you mentioned, I know a bunch of your colleagues, and I think it's really cool what you guys are doing, especially, on this linking fintech and banking front with some, really good content out there. So
Yeah,
psyched to be a
yeah.
part of it.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time, as you know. I mean, you're neck deep in it right now at that convergence of banking, especially community banking and fintech, and we find ourselves in that same world. And it feels like every single day I read an article or find out about a new company getting funded, and it's a super exciting time. And the reason Trevillian and a lot of my colleagues is you have a very unique background. You worked for, I think it was what, 12, 15 years for a hedge fund up in Boston that covered and worked with banks. So can you tell me a little bit about that and just how that role kind of got you ready for this business development role at Narmi?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, definitely not maybe a traditional route into fintech, but, one that I think, as you mentioned, is a little unique and maybe puts me in a pretty good position to be doing what I'm doing now. I was with Castine Capital Management for almost 14 years, as you mentioned, up in the Boston area. And we're an equity fund focused on the bank space, but really, a unique, or not a unique focus, but really direct focus on the community banks, looking a little bit further down the market cap spectrum than your typical, big bank fund. And, in that role, got to know the industry really well, spent countless hours analyzing balance sheets and income statements and, kind of learning the ins and outs of the different drivers of bank profitability, as well as, franchise value. Got to know a lot of the players in the space, ranging from the bankers themselves to investment bankers to analysts to fellow investors, a lot of whom, I consider friends and really love my time there. So, hard to believe, it was almost 14 years, saw a couple different cycles. Certainly 2020 was an interesting time, to say the least. Led to some pretty big upheaval and uncertainties in the market, and also presented some opportunities. So, it was kind of later half of 2020, I was in a position to start thinking about maybe what to do beyond being a bank investor. And during my time at Castine, I was witnessing firsthand this convergence of fintech and banking, and seeing also what was going on outside of banking directly, whether it's with, other fintechs or challenger banks, and just really being intrigued by that, and also recognizing that, banks need to be paying pretty close attention. So
yeah,
as an investor, you're on one side of the table. You're not an operator. You understand business models, but you're not actually helping to build those businesses. And I've always just been intrigued by being part of an operating company and helping to grow something, and just seeing the big need for, really forward-thinking solutions providers. I thought, it'd be a great opportunity to stay in the community bank space, but also, be part of this emerging kind of fintech world where, the banks are largely not getting, what they need, it feels like, from a lot of the existing providers. And if we could step into that gap, it seems like there's a really big, growth opportunity. So was fortunate enough to get introduced to the Narmi folks, and, spent some, a lot of time, as you'd imagine, speaking with them, and ended up joining towards the end of 2020, and, really excited about what we're doing.
No, I was excited when I heard you landed at Narmi, because they've come up a few times, in our discussions about up and coming fintechs and fintechs to watch, and it was great to see you land there, because I think it was a great hire on their part. But during your time, because I love your background, as an analyst, I came up through FP&A also, not investment analysis, but corporate FP&A. So you really know kind of deep into the guts of banking. when did you start to see kind of this shift towards technology, uh, pre-pandemic and then post-pandemic really picking up? But did you see banks, 5, 6 years ago starting to talk about, wow, we really need to shift, like maybe retail did back, in 2010, 2005? Did you start to hear rumblings of that, or is it just kind of taken off in the last couple of years?
Yeah, so I think it's come in stages. Like, just as I've thought back on it, there's been different drivers where, you think about things like CECL and accounting methodologies and needing new systems there, or regulatory and compliance burdens that necessitated certain types of technology. Those certainly were, factors that we saw dating back, numerous years. I think this real focal point on delivering, frictionless experiences and being able to do a lot of things from a mobile or an online device for, on the very front end. That's certainly been going on for a few years, but obviously COVID really accelerated that. I think, one big differentiator that I've noticed over the last few years is, the ability through APIs for solution providers like Narmi to be able to, be in this space as the cores, have kind of opened up a bit where, that connection, I don't think was available, a decade ago, or certainly not to the point where it is now, where the playing field has been opened up a bit, where it's, easier, or it's more feasible to use, third-party vendors and third-party providers like Narmi that are, offering best of breed solutions that you wouldn't have been able to put into your tech stack 5 or 10 years ago. So, certainly conversations around things like better online experiences, customers being able to self-serve, being able to open an account digitally, in a short amount of time, those things really gathered steam leading into COVID, but, then went up exponentially. Just the need to be able to transact, communicate, whatever the case might be with a customer, wherever they are, outside of the branch, just like really, obviously became, front of mind with COVID. And it's also what some of the fintechs and challenger banks were kind of doing already leading into that.
Yeah, and it really is interesting, and you see it every day, and I see it every day. These two industries, I call it fintech and kind of traditional banking. You have an industry that's very risk adverse, very, I want to say set in their ways, but 200. Some of these banks are 200 years old, 150 years old, and this convergence of new technology. So, what exactly does Narmi do for banks? Flexibility, just kind of a high level overview of your products or kind of solutions for community banks.
Sure, absolutely. So, basically we're, enterprise level digital banking provider, several different, platforms that go from digital account opening to consumer digital banking to business digital banking, all of which are, wrapped by an admin portal for, bank's back office. Basically we're focused on delivering, as frictionless an experience as possible to the front end, while also reducing friction for the bank on the back end. So, take our digital account opening, for example. We have one of the fastest solutions on the market where a new customer can apply from any device, any location, be KYC decisioned, funded via, numerous funding methods, and book directly to the core in real time and in under 2.5 minutes. And it feels very much like an experience that they would get from, other types of businesses outside of the bank space. It's just, people are used to having good mobile and good digital experiences in a lot of areas of their lives. And banks really need to, be able to match that. And we're really helping them do that. And, on the consumer digital banking front, business digital banking front, those platforms are full online and mobile solutions that, allow a consumer or business to interact in a way that's intuitive, easy, seamless, and enjoyable. We drive engagement by partnering with third parties on our app exchange, the way we've designed the layout, feels very much like a, either a social media experience or, an experience you find outside the bank space, just the way, you scroll through screens, the way you interact with the tiles and the toggles within the experience. So really just, focused on the end user experience. Like we want them to, be delighted by what, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, and, anything we can do to drive their becoming the bank becoming that customer's primary financial institution. That's really the end goal. And, it's speed, it's intuitiveness, and it's just simplicity,
Yeah, I've said this, it's funny. I think you kind of paraphrased it a few minutes ago. We have all these great experiences. We're so used to on demand, whether it's an Uber or a movie, Amazon having things delivered sometimes in a few hours. Why would we expect anything less from something so personal as financial management? Whether it's your banking, whether it's small business banking, and what I'm noticing, especially over the last, I'd say 3 to 6 months, I'm not sure if you're noticing this also, very niche type products, whether it's a digital bank focused on contractors. I saw that from Nimbus the other day, focused on, banking for contractors and being able to get projects funded quickly, on an iPad or something like that. Very niche focused type. You think about the bank Current up here in New York, focused on younger generation and TikTok or whatever. I'm not even gonna try to explain what they're doing, but it's very focused. It has that customer experience, and that's almost table stakes because you see a market and a lot of people who grew up with this technology. I'm in my early 40s, so I had, AOL, in high school or middle school. But people younger than me, I mean, they grew up with cell phones and Amazon and their whole life. And banking has become that kind of what you said with Narmi, that experience. You want to have that experience, and you also want to have, I think, advice and suggestions, similar to like Amazon suggesting, oh, you bought this grill, now you need this. That takes you through your journey as a human from banking as a teenager to banking as somebody who's retired. So I don't know if you're noticing that also recently too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think consumers and business owners, they have demands now for experiences that need to get met, that are table stakes, where if you're trying to open up a new bank account and you get denied, you're for one reason or another, because of kind of faulty tech, or it's a cumbersome process, or it takes 5 minutes or more, you're not going to go back to that bank. So if we can deliver a solution there where you can open up an account in 2.5 minutes and drive 80 to 85% conversion rates, that is much more likely to drive a lot of great customer outcomes for a bank than kind of what exists in the market today. It's just same thing within digital banking, where I think people want the combination of being able to self-serve wherever possible, be able to find things easily, find easy answers to their questions, take care of everyday transactions, no problem. But if they do need to get in touch with somebody or do need to find an answer, also have that be available. Being able to get provided relevant information is hugely beneficial. If I'm in my mobile banking, do I want to get presented with an offer that doesn't really apply to me? No, I'm going to feel totally disconnected from the bank, because to your point earlier, we're very used to being provided with relevant ads and that sort of thing. So to allow a bank to be really cognizant of what to present, where, and in a method that's going to drive engagement, I think that's one of the areas where Narmi shines, and that's what people are used to outside of banking, and that's what they're going to demand within their banking experience as well. And
then having the data analytics from that engagement, I think is huge. These banks, especially community banks, and we love community banks. I know you love community banks, smaller banks. We want them to thrive, in this digital world. And I think fintechs like Narmi are giving them a puncher's chance against, the Bank of America's, Capital Ones out there, because they're so important to the community,
Mhm.
so important to kind of the structure of an environment, being able to, walk into a bank and get that service. But at the same time, expecting a high level of digital interaction, like you
Yeah.
said, is table stakes. So if they
Yep.
don't want to go into a branch to open up an account, being able to open up an account in 2.5 minutes,
Yep.
but also being able to go into that branch if they need to talk to a banker, and we saw it during PPP process and COVID last year, how important having a relationship is if you're a small business uh, with your banker.
Mhm.
Just being able to explain, and somebody who understands your business, somebody who can pick up the phone and call.
Yep.
So combining, the relationships with the technology is key, and that's what I think Narmi and a lot of other relevant fintechs are doing.
For sure.
Um, and there's a lot of banks out there. Are you seeing a lot of resistance from banks to change at this moment, or credit
There,
unions to change?
yeah, there certainly is some. I mean, I think there's different levels of, I don't know if risk tolerance is the right word, but certainly cultures can differ quite a bit. I think a lot of times it starts at the top, right? Where you do need leadership to embrace some form of change and kind of do away with the attitude that might be pervasive in a bank of, well, this is how we've always done it. It's worked. Why can't we keep doing it? I do think there are some folks that maybe, I don't know if scoff is the right word, but don't necessarily take some of the neobanks, challenger banks, fintechs, whatever you call them, very seriously, even though I think, we could argue about business models and, profitability, if that will actually happen for a lot of these guys. But the reality is I think they have come up with some products and some functionality that now we're seeing some banks actually do themselves, whether it's, regarding overdrafts or it's regarding, a couple other, early wage access, that sort of thing, where there is a reason why, a few of these platforms have gained millions upon millions of users. So just, paying attention to that. I think there are some banks that, and, it's understandable where, vendor consolidation has been the preferred path. It's the path of least resistance. Up until the last, few years, it was, maybe more difficult to integrate third parties. It just makes the decision making easier to buy things off the shelf. So, we do run into that. The concern around third party integrations. I think that's a core competency of ours where we've done really well there and have showed really well that integrating, directly with a core provider, is a real strength of ours. So that is one area to get folks, over the hump, I think. Contract types are also interesting. Those, I think the power generally has been more on the side of the incumbent providers in terms of length of contracts and that sort of thing. So that's part of this is, if you just signed one, a couple of years ago, that's maybe a different decision than if you're, just 1 or 2 years out from renewal. I think there often is, a tension between, what the compliance side of the house wants and what kind of the front end folks would want, which, takes, some discussions to get folks both aligned. That's especially been true maybe on the account opening front of what's necessary or what's, required and what isn't. But I think with every day that goes by and just, judging by the conversations we're having and the inbound requests and, attendance at our events, there is a ever growing awareness of, hey, we need to just, increase our digital capabilities. And, the good news is, and the reason I'm so excited to be here is you don't need to be B of A, you don't need to be JPM, you don't need to have their, army of developers and their budgets, and you don't need to have developers on staff at your own house to get top of the line, best of breed solutions. And you don't have to rely on, the incumbent providers. There are, firms like Narmi that can really, step in there and in a way that, probably wasn't available 5 or 10 years ago. And, there's no reason why a community bank or credit union can't offer the same tools, same services, same products as some of these fintechs. They just need to partner with the right providers to do so. And, that's where, a firm like Narmi comes in.
Yeah, and actually and we're seeing more searches on our end, the talent end for banks, traditional banks looking for, fintech type talent, whether it be somebody who can actually partner with the fintechs, understands APIs and technology. We just placed a fintech president for a bank, a pretty well-known, I don't want to call them a sponsor bank, but a bank that works with fintechs, because it's growing so quickly, and you need to have that talent of somebody who can work with an army, because it's tough. And how does that work talent-wise when you are working with maybe a more traditional bank, and they might not have the talent that is innovative or sophisticated enough to partner with an army? Is there a way to get around that? Simplicity in product, simplicity in connecting to their core. Is that kind of how you're going about your business there?
Yeah, it is a pretty big landscape to get your arms around, to just figure out what providers are out there. And I know that is overwhelming for a lot of banks and credit unions, just trying to figure out what that landscape looks like. I think, our approach is one of being very consultative, where, we're seeing an awful lot, gathering an awful lot of intel that really just helps inform our conversations, with our financial institutions. So there doesn't really need to be internal expertise. There doesn't need to be an internal developer staff. I mean, clearly, there's going to be an IT staff, but you don't need a developer, in-house to work with Narmi. I mean, we will handle all of that from a leadership perspective, implementations, direct access, your direct integrations to the core, and anything that comes along with it. We handle that. We'll walk through it with the financial institution step by step. We can offer lots of advice on what to consider, what we see as best practices, but it's not something that a financial institution needs to be worried about from an implementation standpoint. Now, if they do have developers on staff, if they want to customize things, we're happy to do that as well. We're a very extensible platform, and so if they want to take that in a different direction, we're happy to work with them to do so. We're trying to make our platform as open and as extendable as possible. So we can be 100+% of the solution, or we can be 90+ and have the bank kind of do their own thing for the remainder.
Yeah, flexibility, agile, being able to kind of change with the customer base, with the needs. It's going to be kind of this decade, I think. I mean, we're in 2021, and just over the last year or two, just being able to kind of move in a different direction, like last year with the pandemic. Banks that were able to be flexible or agile or had prepared, maybe not for a complete shutdown, but something like this, were in better shape, a lot better shape, and could provide the customer service to their base, to their customer base and their clients better than maybe some other banks did. But kind of getting back to, we talked about it in the past, kind of this, I hate using the term war for talent, but I think I was talking to a colleague yesterday. It's almost like Mad Max out there now for talent, just, engineers, and but not just for what you would think for fintechs, which is, engineers, product, business development, those type of roles. I'm working with a couple fintechs right now. They're looking for more traditional banking talent, somebody who understands operations on the banking side, so they can work with your customers and help them through, and have gone through core convergence and understand Fiserv and Jack Henry and all the others. So those two worlds converging, it's not like, oh, I can't go work for a fintech, I just came up through banking. No, because I think fintechs like yours, especially who are partnering with these banks, they need experts, subject matter experts, people understand what the clients are going through, to help you with business development, but also to help the engineers and product development. So are you noticing that too, that banking talent is needed on the fintech side?
Yeah, I think so. It's I think your point early on too about just there being kind of a war going on right now is apt. There's quite a lot of demand for engineering talent. They're always, I think, will be on our side as the product and platform is going to continue to be a huge driver for us. Where the engineering team will likely be the biggest team, for the foreseeable, future. I think that's just one of the key tenets of Narmi and the way we operate. I do think your point about trying to bring in, kind of cross-functional expertise is right on, where, we've tried to do that, internally with, I know I've tried to do that internally with just kind of my background, talking with both sales and product and trying to help, kind of my knowledge of what the bankers are generally thinking about, and what the business cases are for functionality, and why we might need to be thinking about certain functionality or certain products, and also just helping our sales folks know what bankers are thinking about as well, from just an industry standpoint, and what drives their business. I think it's really helpful to have all those perspectives come together. I mean, it's really easy to get locked into just product design, without actually, thinking about it from the overall, banking, business itself perspective, and just, sharing ideas, I think is really helpful. So we've really, we've tried to have that inform, the sales process and the roadmap, and also, recognizing that we might not be the right fit for all FIs and vice versa, making, sure in that consultative approach that what the bank or credit union's goals are, that we can help them get there, and not try to force it if it isn't there. So we really try to understand, okay, what are you trying to do as a business? What are you trying to do as a bank? If you want to, lower customer acquisition costs, grow core deposits, if you want to, become more efficient here, if you want to, really increase your ability to go after, small businesses and medium-sized businesses, what's the use case, and how can we solve that for you? So it's really, you're kind of using that industry knowledge to help marry up, our functionality and our fit with those, with the individual FIs.
Yeah, very customized towards, it's not, one size fits all. And I like what you said before, some institutions might need 100% help with, engineering and development, and some might just need 50% or 20%. So yeah, being very customizable, I think, is a key word these days too. So this has been a great talk, Kevin. I really appreciate your time. Any last words of advice for community banks, or predictions? Maybe, I hate saying predictions. Who's going to win the Super Bowl this year, but also for the banking sector over the next year or two. Is it going to continue? Are we going to continue to see more of these Narmi type firms being funded? Do you think there'll be consolidation on that side? We've seen a lot of consolidation already on the bank side, some large mergers already this year. But yeah, I don't want to put you on the spot, or any kind of just feelings on the industry for the next couple years.
Yeah, I mean, it probably goes without saying that I think consumers and businesses are going to continue to just demand more seamless and frictionless solutions, and want to be able to do as much as possible on their own, likely from their phone or similar device. I mean, a business can't fully run off your mobile, but people are so used as consumers to doing a lot of things on their phone. I do think business owners want some functionality there as well, wherever possible. So I think that's probably just a given. I think some advice I would give to financial institutions would be, if you don't have some sort of digital committee, or a committee in-house that's really focused on where you're at and where you need to be, just really spending a lot of time there on what competitors are doing, and that's competitors in the bank space and outside. Utilizing user groups within your own customer base, paying attention to your app ratings. Some of this stuff sounds simple, but I don't think it's actually always utilized, where, I think just, polling your employees and a bunch of your customers about what they think of the tech, solutions, making sure your front line is really empowered. and not afraid to, talk about the digital solutions, I think is really important. I think making sure you have expertise at the board level as well.
I was going to say that board members, right? That's a big topic of ours, secession issues, but also a diverse board.
Yeah.
Diversity in thought, diversity in background, experience, whether they come up through digital experience or fintech experience. And if you go look at the banks that are partnering with fintechs and are very successful right now, and payments, different avenues of revenue, their board is very diverse.
Yeah,
it's,
for sure.
Local, of course you want local community people on the board, but you also have to mix it up with maybe somebody who comes up through a different background, a digital background, but also having, succession plans in place for your bank that's going to shift more in that digital. Maybe you're thinking about having the COO who's been there for 30 years take over, and now the banking industry is changing so quickly, you might want to go in a different direction. I don't know. That's that's up to the banks and the boards and consultants to talk about, but that's a huge issue we discuss a lot. Board, but also talent, like you said, digital committees, having people understand the technology and having people understand the landscape out there. Right, there's so many firms. I mean, we do this every day. I can't imagine a community bank just being bombarded with information and firms and solutions. Which one to go with? I mean, there's so many choices right now, and it's a fun time, but it can be a very anxious time too. Yeah,
it can be overwhelming for sure. I mean, I think one of the real interesting parts of my role here, in addition to really just building relationships with bankers out there, is focusing on our partnership side, where openness, as we talked about, gets thrown around a lot, but really finding, we want to find partners that will extend and complement our platform and help financial institutions make those decisions. We know what we're good at, which is digital banking and digital account opening. But if there's other solutions where somebody has just built a really great product that we think is going to add a lot of value to an FI and its end users, we are psyched, to partner up there. So to help distill that landscape down into, kind of this list of, providers that, we ideally can be able to offer in a plug and play fashion. I mean, that's a real, big component of our platform. And I think we'll end up, having this really wide ecosystem of solution providers that, if you're a bank on the Narmi platform, you have any number of different providers to choose from that go beyond your, beyond the digital banking services that Narmi is offering. And, you've seen that already in our app exchange, and that's only going to expand. So really excited about, the outlook there.
Yeah, man. We'll have fun in New York next week at the 5-year, I guess, anniversary of Narmi and meeting some of this. I know we didn't get into that discussion, but that's a whole other discussion about how it's so funny. A lot of people who've been hired over the last year are finally meeting for the first time in the last month or two.
I'm certainly in that camp, but
it's interesting to see. To see all the culture and getting to know everybody, in person, rather than over video. But it's better than nothing, and I think it's going to be a different world from hiring from remote work, but that's another discussion for another day. But Kevin Kielbasa, thank you so much. Really appreciate the time, man. Always great catching up with you, learning more about the products out there and just your industry knowledge, which is great to have these days. But, thanks a lot, Kevin. Really appreciate it, man.
No, thanks for having me. This was great. Appreciate it.